Hey, thank you for joining another episode of The Lowdown by Analysis.tech. I'm Rob Koplowitz, one of your co-hosts today. I'm here with John Reimer, and John will be co-hosting with me, as is quite often the case. And today's session will be really cool. This is a continuation of how vibe coding is changing the world of entrepreneurship and how the landscape has dramatically changed to get software solutions out into the market. So today we're really lucky to have Wes Carlson. Wes is the CTO and co-founder of Chirpy. And hey, John, I'll turn it over to you to get to know Wes a little better.
Thank you, Rob. Hey, Wes, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
I'm very excited to hear more about your story. So Wes, the way we like to start our podcast is by asking our guests to tell us about their journey. So I understand that you didn't start out in comp sci, or maybe that's wrong, but you certainly ended up in software development. How did you get here, Wes?
Sure, no problem. Well, first of all, thanks guys for having me on. I think this is going to be a really interesting discussion because it's basically going to be about the intersection of sort of entrepreneurship, AI, and building. And from an operator's perspective, somebody with domain experience. Basically, look, I'll go a little bit further back than probably what you require, but I wanted to become an astrophysicist when I left school. I applied to UCT, which is in Cape Town, South Africa. And before actually going, I changed my mind, had a completely change of mindset. And I basically started a restaurant with my family. This is many years ago. And well, when we sold that restaurant, I swore to never get back into the restaurant industry ever again. And I moved into real estate, where I started off as a broker in Cape Town, South Africa. And for context, I live in Mauritius, a small little island in the Indian Ocean. And I very quickly ended up with my own brokerage and my own teams of agents. And I'm telling you this for a little bit of context so I basically, after school, have always been entrepreneurial, and I haven't really had a day job before. And we're talking 20, 25 years now. And so I did the real estate stint. I moved back to Mauritius, and I then in Mauritius started a real estate firm here. We were very successful. And with a good friend of mine, we did delve into a little bit of app development and software development, where we did some blockchain solutions, and we did something called the natural asset exchange. But it was vastly different to the type of things that I've been up to recently. Cut a long story short, that same friend and I decided, against our better judgment, to open another restaurant, which I swore I would never, ever do again. But we did that, and it became wildly successful, but at the same time, extremely draining. As I'm sure it's with many different industries, but restaurants, you kind of have to be everybody. You have to be the operations, you have to be the marketing, you have to be the finance, the owner, the manager, the recruitment, HR, and quickly can burn out if you don't stay on top of things, and the business suffers for it. So that's where I'm at the moment, and that's basically where Chirpy was born out of, is real world problems that I was trying to solve, and I couldn't quite find the solutions I wanted, and started digging into AI. Basically, that's what led to where I am at the moment.
Awesome.
So let's talk about that, Wes, because your backstory is great. I love it. By the way, the astrophysicist thing, you can go back and revisit that. Brian May wanted to be an astrophysicist, but we believe in stars, and he detoured a little bit into some little music thing and went back to it. Hey, I love the backstory of you're a restaurateur, right? But you're here with guys who talk about software development. You saw a problem in your business and you went about solving it. And I love the story. Can you just share with our listeners what it was you ran into and how you went about thinking about solving it?
Well, let's just put it this way. I am not at the outset a software founder, but I was just trying to solve the problem. As you write.
That's what makes it so interesting, right? Is all of a sudden, rather than going out and doing a search for somebody who solved the problem for you, you solved it.
Exactly. So it actually started off with HR. HR was my biggest headache. keeping records and keeping people honest and compiling that every month for payroll to be handed over to the actual accountants, the hired auditors, who would then, do submissions to the tax authorities. So I decided that I would go look online for a solution that could work in this country. And I couldn't find the end-to-end solution where it would facial recognition, keep timestamps, keep records of payroll and all of that, and then go as far as generating an output that was acceptable for the tax authority and generating the pay slips and keeping record and building rosters. And so, you've got very robust international companies that do that, but they just weren't quite the right mold for here, for the legislation here. So I built that. It took about a month and I was shocked. We're still using it now. We haven't licensed it or given it to anybody. It's amazing. Then I went to the next problem that I had. And the problem was social media. It's very, very effective in this industry. Your visibility is key. You can have an operator that's sort of less known than you or less desirable than your business. And yet their social media is really good. And they've sort of cottoned onto something and, you end up suffering because of it. And because you're trying to wear so many different hats in that, it becomes more of a burden than anything else, really. So I was trying to look at it a way, is it like not just a separate marketing thing? I wanted to move it into like actual operations, and how do I streamline it and make it more efficient? And so that's what I was looking for. The problem was, I couldn't just half-heartedly make a few posts. So then I hired somebody. But that person had many clients and they weren't dedicated and they were sort of generic. They didn't know our brand like we know our brand, So it came a full circle back to us again. And then I was like, okay, let's build a solution around this. Because I couldn't find exactly what I wanted online. There are many solutions that do scheduling, or they do scheduling and they also do sort of creative works and analytics and things like that. But it didn't have the sort of automated sort of operating system vibe to it. You might have to use this tool for 2 or 3 things and another tool for another thing and something else. And then also with AI helping you generate ideas, 5 tabs open or 5 apps open, and you trying to orchestrate everything into one system. So that's basically from a domain sort of perspective, like how I came about it. And it actually never was intended for anybody else. And then this one, with my real estate experience, I realized, hang on a minute, I think realtors would find this really, really useful. And so I made a few tweaks and reached out to people I know in the industry, and they loved it. Friends and family and ex-colleagues and things like that. That's how you start, and let them give you the feedback. And yeah, and it's really taken off with realtors, especially at the minute.
Great. John.
That's awesome. So would love to know, Wes, about the tools that you used. By the way, I'm just so impressed with putting together that HR system in a month. I mean,
it was.
I'm really impressed by that. So, because that ain't easy. So, tell us a little bit about the tools that you used to do this.
Okay, sure. So, like when I first started out, I basically heard of an app called Replit.
Mm-hmm.
And I went on there just to test it. I have done a bit of coding in my past. I've never produced production grade software to the point where it's gone out to the masses or anything like that, but I've been involved in the process. So I understand a little bit about architecture and sort of, end to end and the layers that you need. So I started off with Replit, but Replit had just started and I just, one-shot things, write a paragraph, see what pops up, and I was shocked. It's come a long way since then, I must tell you. It's much better now, but I don't only use that now. I've moved on. But I started off with Replit, and what was really handy was Replit you could host, it would help you portion the database, it would do everything for you, and you can even deploy native, from Replit. So as let's prototype something, I mean, what a breeze. So if I had an idea, I could throw it out there, and within, an hour, I could have something that is semi-functional, and sort of validate it to myself and then go down the rabbit hole. So initially it was Replit, then Cursor. Cursor gave more versatility. You could connect whatever LLMs you preferred. You had more sort of options and how you want to do things. You weren't so ring fenced as you are with Replit. Replit does allow you to export your code and go and post it and do whatever you want with it. They don't sort of guard you in that way, but Cursor just gave more versatility, I think. That was the main two, and I still do use those, but now I augment it where I've built a team of agents, and I've just recently, like a week ago, moved my agents from Claudebot to Hermes Agent, where I've got sort of specialized coders that handle specific tasks for me, but I still take those outputs and I bring them back to Cursor or Replit, depending on what I'm doing. So those are basically the AI tools that I use. Within Cursor, I'm using Claude Code, and I believe Replit uses the same. And yeah, that's sort of the high level anyway.
That's awesome. Thanks, Rob.
So, folks, if you like what you're listening to here, thank you for tuning in, and please hit the like button and the share button. Listen, I think Wes's story is actually really cool. It'd be great if we could get the word out to more folks. If you want to hear more about working with Analysis.tech, we're here to help. Myself, John Reimer, also Dave Marcus, tremendous background in product and channel development. We have Rick Greenwald, who's focused on data. Francis Carden, the godfather of RPA, who's now with us. Andy Bartels, former chief economist at Forrester, now working with us. Find us at analysis.tech. Hey, Wes, let's get back to your story. So, okay, you've built this thing. It's really cool. I've seen it. It's actually really interesting for not just for restaurants, real estate. I think for any small business that's doing marketing through social media, we certainly found it interesting here at Analysis.tech. It's something we struggle with as well. It's one thing to build a super cool prototype. It's another thing to take that and harden it for actual distribution into the marketplace so that it scales, that it's secure, that it's private, that the architecture is in line. What was involved in doing all of that sort of work that lives below the surface a little bit? And do people tend to underestimate that when they think about vibe coding?
Yes. I'll answer the last bit first. They definitely do underestimate it.
I did bury the lead a little there.
Look, vibe coding basically is this. It's instead of managing people that are writing code, you're managing an AI writing code. So there's still a lot of decision-making, architecture decision-making. You have to set priorities. There's product direction. There's quality control. All of that. And it's not just baked into the vibe coding apps or the AI tools that you use. So although it makes it a lot easier, I would say the part that it really helps is that you can iterate really quickly. So like, you can move to a prototype quickly and at least for yourself, validate if this is the path you want to go on and make quick iterations, changes as you go. But I wouldn't say that it like completely replaces some knowledge on the other aspects, architecture, safety. At the end of the day, the AI can write the code, but you're responsible for it. You have to sign off on that. It's definitely not going to be taking responsibility. So you can have like an idea in the morning, prototype in the afternoon, for example, internal testing the next day, and then you can go out, and do iterations and then perhaps share it with friends and family. You can do that really quickly, fail fast and learn quickly. And I think that's what the main thing is to take away from vibe coding. I think it's what it enables people to do with domain experience and sort of people in different niches is to impart their knowledge and understanding of problems and solutions in their industry or in their field of expertise. Instead of having to rely on raising funds for an idea and hiring teams and getting specialists, whether it be a product specialist, a market, all the rest of it, you can pull that all together and solve it, but based on their knowledge. Instead of being the reverse of perhaps being someone who wants to create a solution for someone else that they don't have any domain experience about, then you're going to have to do a lot of briefing and still not quite grasp that domain experience.
John.
Very cool. So let's drill down on that a little bit, Wes, if we could, because I'm particularly curious about Chirpy, because Chirpy now you've made available to external customers. It's not just you.
Yeah, exactly.
And the restaurant. So
yeah,
what were the as you contemplated doing that, What were
Yeah.
the risks that you had to identify and kind of mitigate? What did how did you deal with the risk of, the product fails or it throws an error or something, and the customer's like, "What the
Mm.
hell?" You know what I mean? I mean, it just seems like it by taking that step, you entered a much wider world than if it was just
Yeah.
your own.
You're absolutely right, and I hadn't taken that step before. So, I, to be honest with you, I wasn't ready for it, and
Hmm.
I did get errors thrown and big surprises. Fortunately, that's with very initial users, but they were very they bought into the concept, the idea, and we're talking about minor issues that were resolved within an hour. So it was quite surreal, to be honest with you, because the feeling that I had was, okay, let's go, and there's never enough time, and we had a deadline, and we wanted to launch on the product page, and things were going wrong, and nothing ever goes according to plan, and you're troubleshooting. But yeah, it became sort of real when you're starting to transact with real money, like when it's not sandbox money, and testing environments. It comes with responsibility that you burden. I found that something that I wasn't quite anticipating. I was underestimating, how that would feel launching like that, and then seeing the first real paying customers coming in, and so I found that quite challenging. And then I think that the biggest learnings I took from that was monitoring, setting up monitoring,
Hmm.
and not just having fail safes and fallbacks.
Right.
If we go back to like vibe coding again, and that, so this is where like experienced software engineers and developers, they've got that foundational knowledge, so that they bring that to the party and still and forever will do. But somebody who goes in and vibe codes, I think they get the dopamine hit of something being like instantly created in front of them from their mind to the screen, and perhaps most of the time don't know what the back end is doing. Whereas a software engineer and developer, he's been foundational. He's compartmentalized everything, well documented everything, and that is super important. So, fortunately, I'm quite a problem solver, and I've learned very quickly, very, very, very quickly, to apply a lot of those principles, documenting, have fallbacks, security, keys, all these type of things. And yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. And I almost wish that I had been in this field more involved, like properly involved in this field a lot earlier. But I think that it's probably a good thing, because I like to make more decisions than have to be the one to be problem solving bugs themselves. I like the higher level problem
Right.
solving, and being able to, review the code is one thing, but understanding what the problem could be in the code and prompting it and highlighting, logically what it could be, and having a strong AI tool to quickly sift through that, whereas it would take me a millennia to get through, 10,000 or I don't know how many thousand lines of code,
Right.
has been the real game changer for me.
Right. You talked about having agents in your environment that were looking after different things, and I'm guessing that your your creation, that in creating these agents to support the
Yes.
activity, some of
Yeah,
those were there to mitigate risks, security, quality. Is that right?
exactly. That's correct. Yes. So definitely for security. Quality, yes, but in terms of me getting second opinion. So, I've got like Mac minis and MacBooks where I've got separate agents that are plugged into APIs via Anthropic, and that have got certain skill sets that I've trained over time that focus purely on their role, their title, their role and title, and what their domain knowledge and skills and tool sets are. So, I mean, we can even take it further. We've got marketing agents, for Chirpy, that assist with marketing, and their tool set is all about marketing. They know how to handle Slack. They know how to send emails. They know how to, do all the myriad of things that marketing would do. Yeah. So that's on the side, but from the developer perspective, yeah, security and I would say code validation. from that perspective, being the iron sort of guardrail, move it over to, I've got 3 layers, I'll move it over to, and get, move up the chain until it's approved that side, then commit it.
Right. Thank you. Rob.
Wes, as you're solving a lot of problems on your own, you're stitching a lot of things together, but we talk to these, we spend a fair amount of time talking to these vendors. They're advancing these products very quickly, and we've got things coming in from traditional low code vendors, process automation vendors are also harnessing these same type of capabilities. Yes. And it's probably moving at a pace that I don't think I've ever seen before in terms of the advancements. Let's say these things get a lot better, which they will, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot less burden on sort of the technical skills of people like yourselves. Does that move us to an era where business expertise becomes more important than technical expertise in solving software problems?
Yes, I absolutely do think so. Expertise is the sort of the knowledge of how to do something, right? You've got domain expertise, but I would say expertise on its own is I think I would like to use the word experience. You've got experience because it's the one thing AI does not have. You can say it's got all this knowledge that's been fed to it by us, but it doesn't know what a commercial kitchen smells like. It hasn't smelt it before when it walks into a kitchen. It doesn't have real-world experience. So I do think, yes, expertise, but just sort of experience is the big one, experience through...
Hey, John, you want to take us out?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining today's episode. Hope you found it useful. If you're interested in learning more about Chirpy, you can find information at chirpy.me. Again, thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time on the Lowdown from by Analysis.tech.